another Tuesday 10 Talk. I was just here reminiscing about how my dad used to jump into frozen lake. He'd jump right in, jump right out. It was fun to watch. Thought I could do it, never did. Speaking of remembering, I know you'd like to forget a lot about 2020, but there are some really fun, newsworthy events that happened during 2020 that you might have missed because we were so consumed with the few events that commandeered this year. I thought I'd share them with you, and maybe you saw them, maybe you didn't. And maybe they're funny, maybe they're not. But let's go talk. So yes, news-wise this year, our attention has been centered around 4 or 5 different things throughout the whole year. And there's some things you may have missed. And I'm not talking about the crisis that we have with our movie theaters and the fact that the last movie I saw in the movie theater was Bad Boys for Life back in March. But I'm talking about little other oddities, little important things you may have missed because you were so engrossed in these other things. And that's all we heard about, those other things. But did you hear about, for instance, murder hornets? Yes, murder hornets. And they are out of Asia, and they're huge species of hornets and bees that fly around in packs. And their main targets have been honeybees, and they just go in and swoop them down and grab them. They're big enough, these hornets are big enough that they just grab them and fly away and demolish honeybee farms and populations. Of course, honeybees giving us honey, among other things. And so they've known to kill hives of honeybees in a matter of hours. Now, why is that important to us? Well, because some honeybees, some of these murder hornets swarms have started creeping into Europe, into a few of the states in the West Coast. And so sightings have prompted concern, and that they could lead to, among other things, you don't want to get stung by this thing. Now, you won't die, but it's probably the worst sting than you've ever had before, and it could leave a little bit of a mark. Their queens have been known to grow to 2 inches long. So yeah, so you could just imagine what that would do. Granted, this is more of a concern for the honeybee population and honey, but nonetheless, we hear the term murder hornets. What? Something else you may not have heard is that Mr. Peanut, yes, the Mr. Peanut, the guy with the monocle, the peanut, he died. He died in a crash. He actually sacrificed himself to save his 2 human friends, Wesley Snipes and Matt Walsh. Yes, back in March, the company that owns Mr. Peanut let us know that he did pass away. And what happened is the 3 guys, or 2 men in a peanut, if you will, were taking a joyride in the Peanutmobile, the Nutmobile, and they were on a deep canyon road and they slid off, had an accident, and the 3 of them ended up hanging off a tree branch. So then Mr. Peanut, to save his friends, decided to sacrifice his own self. And he let himself go from that branch so the other 2 guys, Wesley Snipes and Matt Walsh, could then get to safety. Mr. Peanut plummeting into the canyon, landing on top of the Nutmobile. You may have seen video of this, but if you haven't, a moment from Mr. Peanut. This next thing you may have heard about because it garnered a little bit more attention than the other things that I've talked about so far. And that is, over the course of this year, there has been four sightings of 4 different monoliths in 4 different parts of the world. The first one was in Utah. Next, we had Romania, California, and then San Antonio. And if you count five, if you count the one that was found in San Francisco on Christmas Day. But that one was a gingerbread one. The first monolith appeared back in November, and it was in Utah's Red Rock Desert. Days later, it quickly vanished, as do most of these monoliths. They're either up for less than 24 hours or they're gone within a few days. People are not sure. Why? Soon after the one vanished in Utah came the one in Romania on top of a hill. And then another monolith appeared in the Pine Mountain Trail of Atascado Park, which is near San Francisco. But where all the monoliths are kind of the same in terms of being 10 to 12 feet tall, but the design is a little bit different, and the etchings on the monoliths are a little bit different. So each one has a little characteristic. Of course, the gingerbread one has gingerbread house flavoring and icing and looks and smells like a gingerbread, whereas the others do not. So around the weekend of March 13th, right before St. Patrick's Day, almost every sporting league, sporting company in the world shut down, if it was already going, not to be played. But luckily finally in June, we had soccer come back, European soccer, we had NASCAR come back, and eventually we had more soccer, we had basketball, and baseball, and finally football. What we didn't have was crowds in the stands. So these sports gave us the entertainment we needed, the escape we needed, but we weren't allowed to be there. So what did they do? The TV stations, the networks that carried these sports, started throwing in sounds, cheering sounds, crowd noise, which when you have the wide shots of this empty ballpark or an empty soccer pitch, yet there's this noise of crowd sound coming through your TV or your phone or whatever you watch the sport on. That was really a bit weird, wasn't it? I thought so too. And for me, it was more fun to listen to the players play, the players talk and have their stuff in between each other. The crack of the bat on the ball. To add to that, you had cutouts of people in the stands. And so not only you had this weird sound of stuff being piped into the stadiums, but then you had these cardboard cutouts of goofy people's faces on them. Now, when I say goofy, I mean they were you and me, but they were just slapped on a piece of cardboard. Cool and all, yeah, and you had to pay for it. But it was a little bit weird at times, I think. And so those two things kind of made the welcoming back of sports just a bit odd. And it kind of actually represented what 2020 was all about with sports, if you kind of think of it that way. It was really kind of weird. Did you have your face at some ballpark or some pitch? Come on, you know you paid for it. So there's certainly some feel-good stories that came out of this whole year, some feel-good stories that came out of the whole COVID of it all. And one of those stories is sports related. Now, most of these sports before baseball started did a bubble. And so the risk and the infectious rate was way down. Baseball comes out, they did not do the bubble. Of course, what's going to happen? One of the first teams to get hit was the Miami Marlins. And they had 18 players and 2 coaches sidelines very soon after starting their play. One of the lucky things that came out of that, the positive things that came out of that, is a player by the name of Eddy Alvarez. got the call up. And why was special about that? Because he's not the only person that got it. I just thought this was a cool story because he, not only was he a baseball player and baseball was his passion, but in between, before he started minor league, he was actually an Olympic gold medal. No, not in baseball, but in speed skating. He went to the 2014 Olympics and medaled in the Olympic event of speed skating, and particularly as in a relay. The single events he didn't do so well, but nonetheless, he came home with a medal. And then picked up the bat where he left it off and got into the Marlins farm team, minor league teams, and eventually was called up. He would spend the next 5 weeks playing, appeared in 27 games, and played a couple different positions, hit 241, and a couple good hits to name. I just thought that was a really cool, feel-good story of the year. Now, one of the things that excited me this year, of all the things, is back in the end of May, from the U.S. soil, we launched 2 humans, 2 astronauts back into space for the first time on U.S. soil since July of 2011. It was very exciting, great progress, a great moment in our space history where we are finally back into sending astronauts from U.S. soil in U.S.-made space vehicles back to space, back to the International Space Station. And SpaceX, the company that is partnered with NASA to do this and bring us the Dragon vehicles, had that launch, and then also back recently in November, the first crewed launch and mission to space, to the International Space Station. Eventually, we're going to go back to the moon. Eventually, we are going to go to Mars. Exciting stuff. I cannot wait. I'm very excited for it. And somebody who always wanted to be an astronaut when they grew up, that was fun to see. And just cannot wait for more launches. The last thing you might have missed is something out of this world and pretty quite crazy, if you ask me. But there's always theories about UFOs. We can't be so naive to think we're not the only living organism in this whole sphere solar system and beyond. But back in April, the Pentagon released 3 short videos of showing unidentified aerial phenomena, and that were previously leaked. And the video shows UFOs moving rapidly, being recorded by infrared cameras, and also being detailed by the pilots that saw them. And according to reports, the videos were released by the Pentagon in order to clear up any misconception by the public on whether or not the footage had been circulating was real or not real, and whether or not there's more videos. So not that official word by the Pentagon made any clear definition as to whether or not they thought it was UFOs. They did acknowledge that those videos existed and that there could potentially be videos of UFOs and shots of UFOs. As concerned by legislators and other people growing by the accounts of things flying over our air bases. The clips were from 2014 and 2015, and these mysterious objects flying around, all looking a little bit similar. At a coincidence, the Pentagon recently released that they were forming a committee that would observe U.S. military aircraft and the possibility that there's been contact by UFOs. I don't know. It's kind of all wishy-washy. It's kind of very Area 51 to me, but nonetheless, that is the of the stranger news bits to come out of this year that you may have missed. So those are just some of the crazy news bits that you may have missed because our news is dominated by the big news of COVID, the election, Black Lives Matter, and the pandemic, not just here in the United States, but around the world. So just my attempt to give you some fun and humor to go dig up maybe some more about these crazy odd bit news pieces. Or maybe you already knew about Mr. Peanut. Or maybe you already knew about the UFO. Nonetheless, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking me out. Thanks for hanging with me here on another Tuesday Tent Talk. Just want to say thank you for tuning in to my Tuesday Tent Talks, whether this be your first one or you've been here from the beginning. I wish nothing but the best for you in 2021. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a great year. And as we look back on the events of this year, I just have to say thank you to those that got me through the spring when I dealt with the ugly virus known as COVID-19, particularly the folks at St. Luke's Hospital here in New York City, my wonderful family and friends who have me in their thoughts and their prayers every single day, and most importantly, my wife, who, though she is not a nurse, she played one on TV, and she got me through those 8 weeks of horribleness. And hope none of us ever have to deal with that again, and we won't. So good luck to you. Enjoy the last couple of days of this year, and we'll see you in 2021. Jumping in the water. Not this one, but when it was iced over. Jump right out, of course. And speaking of remembering, I thought I'd bring you back and think about this year because there's some things you may have missed as you... Hey, look, an easy place to find all my Tweet Talks and my Tuesday Tent Talks. Thanks.